Welcome back to another feedback round video. So, today I am going to start with Isabella here, and I like to often go back to see the first iteration, like where it started from and where we are now, just to take a look at progress. So, this is the latest from Isabella, and this is the very first submission. So if we take a look, this is great progress. So I just want to keep in mind, this is something I do pretty often when I'm lighting. Usually I'll have it at the same frame, but nonetheless, we can see that a lot of progress has been made. So now if I'm looking at the latest, and often I will note, one thing is sometimes this does happen where I'm working on a shot and I look at my first iteration, like this one, and I'll be like, oh, there's some elements that I like from this first one, or maybe I realize I've gone in the wrong direction and then I go back. So it's not, don't worry if sometimes you look at your first iteration and you're like, did I go maybe too far? This is what this process is all about. So in this case, I think Isabella's done great progress. I'm not going to say, to go back to the first one, but I'm just calling that out, that could happen sometimes. So it's not unusual. But this latest is looking great, Isabella, and I was going to pull up the latest paint over from the last one, and yeah, it's definitely made quite a bit of progress. I'm really liking that you were able to, especially like the depth in the background previously, it wasn't feeling that kind of depth behind in the background, like pushing back into space, and there wasn't as much shaping back there. But right now I'm definitely feeling it, especially here. I think you did a great job. A couple of things to, bring it even closer if I'm looking at this. So one thing that I do like is that you brought down this area here where it was blowing out, right? From the last iteration, like here, you can see it's not as bright. But the one thing that I'm seeing is that we lost is the intensity of the key overall. Now we're not having that. If I'm pulling up the reference, let's say, it does feel like if I'm looking like here at this light here and the key on their face here, right? I'm not feeling that anymore in your shot. It's looking a bit muted in the key. Like, I would love to see the similarities of like her here. She's getting hit by that light. Kind of, her being hit here by this light. Perhaps a little bit wrap around him here, right? We would get like this key here would feel a little bit stronger, similar to like how he's seeing here. We wouldn't go as bright as here probably, but you get more of that kind of brightness coming in through here. So that's the one thing, the big thing that I'm seeing that I'm missing here to bring that back. And I know it was hitting really strongly here on this arm, and this is where we may need to move that light and how it's kind of, and this is when you're like starting to shape characters, is it in a position that is optimal for lighting, right? These characters. So like right now, if it's hitting this strongly here, suspecting it's coming like right here, but that's not a great angle, let's say, to reach this kind of light here. So don't be afraid to, play with that light position. What's the optimal? And this is where, honestly benefits us that this is a digital space and we do have the freedom a bit to play with this, how the light hits, and get it to the best possible way to tell that story. So that's one thing, like especially, here, this is a nice example in the reference, how that light is hitting that side of the bookcase there, and then it goes darker over here. That'd be a really nice hit to get onto this bookcase too to get a little bit more interest. So that is a big thing that I'm seeing here that we should now work on. The other thing that I'd like you to, just changing colors here, is the texture on these pants and the color choice as well. I think we want to look at this. The texture wise, if I kind of zoom in a little, it doesn't feel like it's fabric, or it almost feels plasticky, I guess, like this kind of matte plastic, which is odd for pants. So one thing I think it's that we should invest time in adding a little bit more texture and material to the pants. You can also do it to the shirt too. And I would look into changing the color of these pants just because I don't think we're doing any favors with this color, especially it's blending quite closely to the box. So I would suggest, if it was me, I mean, play around with it. I think maybe like perhaps make it denim, right? Make him wearing jeans or something, but play with this because right now color does play a key role when you are creating a shot and telling the story, and we don't want to draw the eyes in a different way, and this is definitely drawing my eye towards it, and it's not reading as pants. So that's another thing that I will call out that I think we should definitely work on. And then once we get this key light in here and here, I think we can then balance a little bit better the eyes here, because then I'd see this side falling more into the fill side here, and naturally I think this is fine, but we'd probably I want to see this white to be a little bit less bright. I think she is okay, and I'd expect her right here to get a little bit brighter. But that's something you also want to watch out, especially when they start animating. Make sure their eyes and their teeth kind of fit into place and they don't stand out. They're not glowy. So that's another thing I want to call out. But overall, I think, you've done a great job, especially looking at the where we started and where we are now. And yeah, I am really liking it. And don't be afraid if you do go brighter on the key. Like, I expect then probably like in the background here it might go a little bit brighter, like we might see a little bit more interest back there, and that's fine. But yeah, I think that's what we need, that feeling of the light coming through. Okay, awesome job. Moving on, we've got the Winter Cabin by Chris, and it is looking awesome. This is the latest, and just like before, I'm going to bring up the very first iteration to kind of see the back and forth. And I love the progress. I think it's going really well. If I bring up the latest paint over I did for you, this was your submission, and I did this quick paint over where I added more contrast and less atmospherics to the house to kind of make it pop more. And then I remember I also lifted this foreground a bit and I cooled it off. So I think overall the house is feeling much more grounded. I'm reading it better. It's popping out kind of like from that atmosphere. I really like what you've done to right here. I think that's really nice, that warm hit that's coming from it. And we're really close. The big thing here that I saw that we can do, and I think this probably, once we hit this, we're pretty much done, is this foreground here. This here specifically, the color and the color is calling to me, where it's like getting into this kind of awkward greenish yellow color, and it's feeling, there's a term that we often say in lighting, it's not really a technical term, but dirty. So it's feeling dirty to me is what comes to mind, and this comes a lot with snow. Whenever I'm working on snow shots, the coolness of the snow is really important, because if you get snow is a tricky thing where when you add the warm colors, sometimes you get this awkward mix, right? And this is reminding me of it, where the snow feels dirty. It makes me laugh. It's like I live in New York City. Here's a backstory. I live in New York City, and the snow, like the first snow, like when it first falls, it's beautiful, right? It's like, Central Park, and it's all lovely. And then the joke is with New York City, within an hour, it just gets dirty and disgusting because there's like, you know, cars, and to be frank, I'm thinking of like dog pee, let's say, which turns the snow like yellow and not very appealing anymore. And this is what honestly I thought of when I saw this yellowish greenish color. I was like, oh, it's like dirty New York City snow. So my call out for this is, it's all there. I see what you're doing. It's getting the warmth of that light here hitting here, but it's reading dirty. So what I would encourage is to, and this is what I did in this paint over actually, is I did skew this to more of a cooler tone. So to avoid exactly what I'm seeing here, this like yellowish greenish color. And I see that you lifted it, especially from here, which is good. So I think what I would say is, in the foreground, let's try to introduce this, or reduce the warmness here, but bring in a little bit of cool. So if I do a quick, let's see, paint over here to showcase this. Let's see if I can do this quickly. And this, of course, is just a mock-up. So I'm just drawing a quick mask here. Let's see. So let's say this is my mask. Let me see if this is working. I'm not seeing it working right now. Hold on. Oh, okay. Well, that's the levels that I just put in. So let me only have it affect this area here. So I'm just roughly masking this area out. Okay, and now if I'm just pulling, let me just pull this aside so you can see what I'm doing. And this is a great way to test out things really quickly if you want, in like Photoshop or something, or do quick paint overs to see how things look. But so if you see, I'm in the blue channel and I'm adding more blue. See, look, that's taking away the blue. And I'm going to take away a little bit of this green, just slightly. This is where sometimes I like just really kind of play. Let's go back to the overall channel. So I can kind of lift the darks a little bit more. So just like that, let's take a look. So you see how it brings it back to that kind of snowy day type of color, and that's by adding the coolness back. And we still get the hint of the warmth from the house, but it's more subtle, and we're bringing back the cool of the snow. I might have lightened it a little bit too much. We can bring it back here like that. Yeah. But you get the idea. So I think once we hit that, we're in a really good place. So let's go ahead and implement that for the next iteration. Amazing job. Again, I'd like to say you know, looking at the first iteration and this one, it's really good. So I'm excited to see where this goes. And I will say now, looking like between the two, I'll say the first iteration did really have that coolness in there. And we did definitely skew a little bit more towards the warmth because we were, you know, focusing more on bringing this out. And I think like bringing the warmth here is really kind of brings it all together. So I think it's kind of this balance in between, right? And it makes me think, honestly, I think it would be interesting now that I'm in here and I saw this back and forth, because I do like the warmth going on, like especially back here in the snow. So now that I did that, let me just try a quick thing. I'm curious, what if we bring back the warmth in the whole thing and see what it might look like. Oh, see, look, that's interesting. So I just brought the warmth a little bit in overall to the whole scene right now. And look at that difference. I like that. What do you think? Yeah. So I think that's actually more successful visually to bring the warmth in the whole entire area, but you still need to definitely bring it more into this forefront here, the foreground. See, because that's where it looks like it's off. But to add it to the entire thing, it also brings it in together. And this is a great example that I looked at the first iteration to get that inspiration here. So I would go ahead and bring back a little bit of the cool overall, because look at that difference. So this is the submission. This is with the foreground cooled off. And then this is with the overall image just brought in with a little bit of blue. Like, that was super subtle, but it makes such a big difference. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, great job. Next up, we have Teresa. So, awesome. Okay, that is actually your original. I was playing already with your image. So this is your original shot here, and then this is your reference here. So overall, I think, one, a super fun project with, you know, lots of vibrant colors. We've got a lot going on. The biggest thing here when I first looked at it is, one, we're not going like big enough with the lights. Like, I think the base is there. You've got the foundation of like, okay, you got the green lights here. You got this vending machine with a nice red light coming on. You've got the lanterns up top. It's awesome. But when I'm looking, the thing that's missing is going bigger. Like, these lights here should be spilling out even more. It should be affecting this whole area, because look at this. This is an awesome reference. This light, this vending machine here, which is, I'm assuming, could be quite close to this one. Look at the light that's coming out of it, and then all the ambient things that are affecting it. Same here, right? It's like, it's not only isolated to that area, it's spilling out. Like, look at the green that kind of spills out here and here, right? And the glow, that's the other thing. It's like missing that diffuse like glow feeling to it. So overall, I think that's where we need to go. We need to go bigger with this, where like, let's match this kind of feeling of this warmth of the light, this redness, but it spills out. Like, I'm not seeing this light. Let me grab my, just change the color so we see it. Like, I'm not seeing the influence here, like, spilling out over here or around it, right? It should be so bright like that I can feel that influence, like pools of different color. Like, this green and here should be affecting more, right? It should all kind of, and it's, the base is there, we just need to go further with it. Don't be afraid to like really show that atmosphere, that light effect. And then the other part is, so the first thing is just work on kind of having the light travel further to affect the scene, right? Like look at this, like look at how it's kind of spilling all around the scene. And then the other thing that comes to mind with this reference is the diffuse, the glow that's going on, right? So let's bring that in. That could be in post, and this is what I started kind of playing with a little bit here. That's too much. But I was kind of playing with what it would look like to kind of have a nice kind of glow feel to this scene. But that's like a little bit of how you can kind of create more of that dynamic. And what I'm doing here is it's a post effect, is I'm essentially taking that image, kind of crunching the levels so you get the really hot spots, and then I'm screening it over and kind of playing with the level of effect here. Like this would be full, which is not what we want. We want it more subtle, like that. And it's also like a little bit of a blurred image from that. But this kind of creates that effect, right, that you are seeing in here. So I think that's a post thing. Like once we get, the first thing is to get like the lighting in a good place, and then we can apply kind of these post diffuse glow type feel effects to it. But overall, great job. And I know it's his first thing. And then all the things like when you start adding this light here, it will affect this spike here, you know, then we can get more into depth about how this light is affecting this space. But overall, I can't wait to see the updates and how this progresses. So next up, we've got, I like how you combined the two lighting assets, the boy and the snail. Actually, three, right? You did the boy and the snail, a fruit bowl, and then the alley in the background. So I think that's great. And this is your reference. So taking a look at this for the first time, I'm just taking a look at your reference. I think it's great. Now let me look at this shot. Okay. The first thing I gotta say I notice here, I don't know, there's something funny going on. No, it's not a lighting thing, but it distracted my eye. I don't know if it's the rig, but that seems off to me. So check that the rig looks okay here, because right now it almost feels like his back is humped in a funny way. So it's a little side note. The other thing I'll say is I like it, and I'm trying to think about, you know, looking at this reference, you have the backlighting, and it's definitely working towards that. The big differences that I'm seeing with this reference in your shot is the contrast value, where this one, it definitely has a higher level of contrast between the darks and the lights than you have it. It's more kind of ambient lit, especially in the shadowed areas. Like I'd be expecting more of a contrast, especially like down here. And I think that's where we can definitely add a little bit more of it going into shadow. So let me just take this out. So if I look at it without it, yeah, I think, you know, this should fall more into shadow here if it's truly backlit like that. And don't be afraid. And I'm also wondering, so this is how this is hitting here. I think his eyes are too bright. His eye whites, especially here, are too bright for the fact that he's in shadow, right? I think we can go darker here. And also on the back ends of these fruits. So overall, the overall note is, I think the key direction and everything, it's working. Part of me wants to move it a little bit more this way, but I understand there is a building here, so it might not be super realistic, but to like add a little bit more shaping here. But overall, what I want to see first is the levels in the correct place, similar to this reference where they have more of that contrast level, especially darker here. Sorry, my scribbles are not as refined as they should be. So what I want to see is the darkest elements like here to create that shaping, right? And then the next level of shadowing, then this would also go darker, the back sides. And this would add more of a nice kind of backlit scene. And then here too. This area should be more shaped. Like right now it's all even here in the shadow, but really it should fall off. So it has a subtle fall off into shadow. So it gets darker here. And then the other call out is, let's take a look at the shirt and why is that correct in that rig, because that's throwing me off. Like it looks like, did you move this? I don't know, it feels like the rig, he's like he's positioned in a funny way. And then the other thing is this eye white. When you bring this down, this eye should naturally come down with it as well. So let's start there. And then the other thing I'll say is, so the rays are nice, the volume coming down, but let's try to soften that line here. So it's a softer feeling of the light coming down. We're not seeing like distinct lines that we are now. Okay, awesome. It's looking really good. I can't wait to see the progress. So moving on, we have Diyor. Sorry if I said your name incorrectly. I am really liking this shot. I saw it does get animated as well. And looking at your reference, I think, it's a great first iteration of it. Okay, and I pulled up this reference as well that you had here. Just taking a look quickly. Okay. I'm going to take that one away. And let's look at your shot here. Okay. So overall, I think it is, a great start. One thing, the biggest call out, the first thing that I'm seeing is the eyes, which is good, right? We want to see the eyes, but at the same time, I am thinking it's one evenly, like the sides in shadow. This is one thing I always look at when I look at anything, and we want to try to avoid the kind of glowy eyes, right? If something's in shadow, the part of the eye that's in shadow should naturally be less bright than the part that's in key light, right? So that's the first thing that I'm noticing. This one should come down compared to this one. Another thing with these type of, and I know you mentioned adding reflection in here with the glass and it gets darker, and the one thing I'll say, it doesn't necessarily get darker, it adds more shaping to it, and I think that's what's interesting about it. So I would bring that in here, because right now it's pretty flat, right? It's not that it's getting darker, it adds a little bit more interest here. So in the next iteration, I'd like you to put it in here and then we can talk about that. But overall, right now, that's the biggest call out I have. And I think the teeth can also go brighter, especially with compared to, I'm looking at the eye whites. So the teeth and eye whites are something that you kind of want to make sure they're similar in value, that like one's not too bright compared to the others, because then it'll look dirty. So that's one thing you want to balance. Like this eye white's so bright, I'd want the teeth to be a little bit brighter too, so there's not as big of a difference. I want this eye white to go down. Another thing I'm looking at, and you did mention like the background and the set, is I think the set's looking really nice overall. It's dressed really well. I love this little unicorn here. I think we can afford to go with more shaping and contrast and in the background. So even though this is daylight scene, like if you look at your reference even, it's pretty even, but it is darker here and here and like around where under the window. So for me, I'm thinking, right now this tone and this tone are the same. So I'd like this area, especially underneath the window, to go a little bit darker, right? In shade. So it's like in shadow. And then you'll feel this light hitting a little bit stronger. And I think that will add to the interest in the shaping of the shot. Another thing is, if I'm looking at, let's go to her lighting. I do agree the second iteration is better. She's more lit in the face. One thing I wonder, let me get rid of the drawing to look at her, is perhaps I think she might almost have too much contrast, to be honest with you, because when I look at your reference, especially, I did see you had like some Peanuts reference in the other one too. It doesn't go, that one goes kind of dark. This one, let me see. Overall, I think we can come up with the fill. Like especially here, what I'm looking at is this ear. It's feeling quite dark, especially, with all the other light coming in and bouncing in. I don't think it would be that dark. And I think it would be a little bit warmer too in tone, because we're feeling like I'm looking at all the things around her, and that's feeling very cool right here, this ear. So I think we can afford to have a little bit more fill on her fill side. So let's start there. Another thing we can look at too is having the outside here exposed a little bit stronger, because it's kind of like this where photography kind of plays in, and you can see it here in this reference too. The outside is exposed. It's feeling a bit brighter, and this is kind of even. Like it's like the same. Like I'd almost think that this should be a little bit more overly exposed out here to kind of create that feeling of like the sunlight, and that's the outside with the bright sun, and it's just a different exposure out there. So I think that will also help tie in and sell this shot with the sun streaming in from the outside and this character in the classroom. So let's start there, and yeah, I can't wait to see the progress on this one. Amazing job. That is the reference. Okay, Michal. So awesome. This is looking good. Let me see here. So that was the first iteration. So I already, because I pulled it up. So this is the very first iteration you came up with. and this is the latest. And I'll say, like, look at your first one. I just want to take a moment. Look at the first one, compare, and this is your reference throughout the whole time. And then now look at your second one. So much closer, and there's so much progress. I know you've worked quite a bit on this, and I think it's great. And it's definitely getting there. And overall, now I'm just looking at this. I think we're in a pretty good spot, to be honest. I mean, I know we've worked on this quite a bit, but we've gone back and forth. There's just like little things, I'll say, that we can work on here. And it's still just the leveling of the dark areas, and they're super subtle. And this is where lighting gets, not nitpicky, but, you can keep on looking at it for quite a while. The biggest thing that stands out here is right here, he goes very dark, and also right here, right? It's kind of drawing my eye a little. I'd want to lift these blacks just slightly, so I'm not kind of like drawn specifically to it. And the other thing is, I keep on looking here, right, to this level, and then just lifting this up here so it doesn't go to pure black right here. Same thing here, just slightly. But overall, I think we're super close, and yeah, let's make these adjustments and then see where we stand there. Also, let's bring this a little bit up to that same level as well. But awesome job. Again, just like celebrate. Look where you came from and look where we are now. It's a huge difference, so amazing. And that brings us to, okay, so that one we spoke about. There's one more here that I'm going to pull up because it's an animation. So, wait, hold up. Let me make sure that it's in the screen. Let's see if I can. I'm just gonna, excuse me. Okay, let's pull it up here. And I'm gonna make it small so it fits the screen. Okay. So Ingrid, awesome job. Let's see this animated. And I'm gonna play it on, maybe play it on loop. Either way, let's just play it. Okay, I think it's playing really well. The biggest things that I am seeing here is one, the mustache and the hair here are different, and I don't know if that's intentional. Like, I was noticing this the other day actually, that it's very white here and here it's gray, so that's a call out. The other thing, I don't know if that's intentional. If that is, that's fine, but also if you want to kind of bring that closer, then maybe like to this gray here, then that would also work. The other thing is I want to figure out where this shadow is coming from, because it's definitely distracting. Do you see that? You get this double shadow happening and you have all these shadow playings, and that's something we want to try to avoid. Usually we don't want multiple shadows like this overlapping one another. So find out where that shadow is coming. Often, like softening that light so it's not creating such a hard shadow will help alleviate that. So one, identify where that shadow is coming from, and let's try to get rid of that because that's getting really distracting in the animation. And then let's look overall, taking a look over here. Here in the pants, I'm liking the rim light a lot. He's still not, like the values here, he's getting lost in the dumpster. In the like I'm looking at his pants color, the dumpster color, it's almost like same, right? We're not seeing him pop from the scene enough. So a couple of things we can do here. One, we can work on perhaps the texture going on here, like how it's catching light, can like shape his pants a little bit more, fill that in. Another thing we can do is adjust the color of his pants, right? So it's not the same color as the dumpster, or vice versa, right? You can change the dumpster color to perhaps like that dark green dumpster color, right? But these are things that we start and if I'm looking also the garbage bags here, they're all the same color. And this is where we go to the next level when you're creating a scene. Like, not only are we looking at lighting, but we're looking at color composition, and we have the power to adjust that. So if it was me, I would probably look into I would either look into changing this to be like a dark green tone of the dumpster to differentiate, but then also these trash bags would need to be a slightly different shade than they are now, right? So he can pop there. Or the alternative is, to make him wearing jeans, let's say, right? And then, but I would say I would still adjust so these two tones aren't exactly the same. Maybe it's like just a lighter shade here for the trash bags. It's more like gray trash bags or something, just to differentiate it and create more of like a visual appealing scene. So let's keep on playing. Okay. So overall, I think he can use a bit more of a backfill here, because he's getting super dark back here, and he's flat. So this is where I'd like to see a little bit more fill that shapes this dark area, especially like in the hair here. He's just I'm not feeling the body here. So that's the other thing. But overall, I am really liking it. I think it's great. It's great to see it in action, in playing. So amazing job. So let's hit those key points, and I can't wait to see your next iteration. So with that, everyone, thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see your work moving forward. With that, happy lighting.